I want to take just a couple minutes tonight because we're almost done with our rhetorical analysis unit to talk about the practical reality of timing. You have 40 minutes on average to read these or to write these 3 essays. Again, you 3 essays are synthesis, argumentation, rhetorical analysis. For our purposes, we're doing rhetorical analysis first. In a couple weeks, we're shifting to argumentation, and then when it gets closer to exam, we're going to shift to synthesis. You should feel fully prepared if you're with me all year going through this, and then obviously putting in a lot of good work in your classroom. 40 minutes per essay is super tough. Now, you might make a plan of like, hey, I'll spend 50 minutes on synthesis because there's bonus reading time at the beginning. Well, I'll talk about that when we get into the synthesis unit of how to best use that. So really, you've got 15 minutes of reading prep time and then 40, 40, 40 for these essays. Rhetorical analysis often takes the longest because you have to read a full work or a big excerpt of a work from a work. Here's what I actually recommend. I think you can write a lot, and you might steal minutes from synthesis and put maybe 45 minutes here because of the synthesis reading time. But I'm going to plan out my recommended time, and I'll show you here in the next couple slides, assuming you want to spend 40 minutes on rhetorical analysis. And if I'm not being thorough enough, feel free to shoot me a question or just follow up with your teacher of what's working best for you in the classroom. But practice timed essay writing several times just to get a good sense of what your timing strategy should be. I'm going to say here's one really possible and effective way to map out your time, but it's really important that you play around with this and figure out where is your time best spent as an individual. What I definitely don't want, because the problem that I see so often, is this slide right here. Not spending enough time in the text. Not spending enough time because you want to get to the writing. You're so anxious, and that's all appropriate. Like you should be like, I want to get to the writing. But only get to your own writing once you have a nuanced comprehension of the text. So I recommend spending the first 12 full solid minutes comprehending the text, understanding the pieces of it and how they fit together. Keep the audience in mind, and then you're starting to narrow down what's worth writing about. What's the writer's most effective writing choices to try to move the intended audience. 12 solid minutes. Now clearly that only leaves us 28, right? So we've got a lot of quick writing to do, but none of that writing is going to be as effective as it would be if I don't spend the time here. So I have to spend the time up front. The writing should go quicker if I take 12 minutes to comprehend the text at a high level and to identify what's worth writing about. My live session from 2-3 weeks ago. Once you've done that, 6 minutes for an intro. That might be longer than a lot of teachers recommend. I justified that last week, spending a whole hour pretty much looking at effective introduction paragraphs. So the intention here is cranking out the quality writing that I know you can do in a very constrained time setting. So in an ideal world, we're writing the best intro we can in 6 minutes. Then we got to cut our losses and move on. We can't spend more than 6-7 minutes on the intro because we do have to spend the bulk of our writing time in the body paragraphs. That's what the live session is about today. This is a very, very important live session to walk through and probably come back to throughout the year. So 6 minutes on intro. Keep practicing your time as you practice those this year. Now that moves us to 18 minutes that I recommend. And some of you might say, hey, I'm just not quite fast enough. I've got to do more, so I've got to steal time from somewhere. This is just my recommended time, remember. Something at least as a starting reference for you. 2 or 3 body paragraphs. I emphasize to my students every year, quality over quantity. This does not have to be a 5-paragraph essay that so many of you were taught since middle school, right? And so many AP essays still are 5 paragraphs. It just doesn't have to be. I would much prefer you to have 2 awesome, thorough, beautiful body paragraphs like we'll look at tonight than 3 that are rushed just to have 3. So a lot of my students start the year with 2, just trying to get to 3 at some point. A lot of my students, if I'm being honest, every year take the test in May and still are only at 2 body paragraphs. And that's just fine. Quality over quantity. Now you want more than 1 body paragraph because you do want to see, like, you want to have a good sense of organization and logical thoughts. I think 3 is ideal, but that's from the ideal of 3 beautiful, awesome, thorough body paragraphs. So 2 awesome body paragraphs are better than 3 mediocre ones. as you're doing that, it's 2 or 3, and honestly, most students should probably be starting the year at 2 body paragraphs. And until you're kicking butt and writing 2 beautiful body paragraphs, that's what I want you focusing on. But either way, if you're organizing 2 or 3 body paragraphs, consider how you're organizing the essay. I'm going to tell you how I recommend my students and do it. It does depend on the prompt, but moving from beginning, middle, and end. So you'll hear me talk about that tonight. That is not a required way to organize. I think that's an effective way to organize, and I think it's a pretty easy way just to say beginning, middle, and end. That's an easy way to organize. So whatever it is, you should be intentional. It should not just be, okay, this is what I identify first. I'm going to write about it first. Where are you starting in terms of your body paragraphs? Where are you ending? They should build upon each other. And I'll show you what I mean by that when I get to my sample writing tonight. I recommend doing 2 minutes on a conclusion. I've met teachers who argue with me and say, and obviously in a healthy way, but say, hey, I don't even teach my students to write a conclusion because I need to spend their time in the body paragraphs. And I essentially agree. As a reader, I know that we've talked about this a lot, like at the reading tables, as we're like, hey, should they lose points for not having inclusion or not? And honestly, there's no easy answer to that. I recommend my students, so I recommend to you, take 2 minutes to quickly rehash the rhetorical situation, talk about the audience, subject, speaker, and then it's just providing a sense of closure for your essay. So like final rhetorical thoughts here. I'm not going to spend a whole live session on it at this point in the year. It's 2 minutes of your 40. Just make sure you're taking a few sentences there at the end. Even if it's 2-3 sentences, it's providing a sense of closure. Now, an ineffective conclusion simply like restates a thesis and that's it, right? So many teachers say, I don't do that because like you are kind of wasting time at that point. So kind of broaden it out. And again, just experiment this year. We're not going to do a live session yet because I want to get to argumentation for sure and go through the ropes with that. But something I definitely am considering is what an effective conclusion looks like and how we can make that happen. So with that said, at this point in the year, if this isn't your strong suit, don't stress about it, but include it in there. And it's something like once you've mastered intro and body paragraph, we can talk about, and you can talk with your teacher, or you can reach out to me on what an effective conclusion actually practically looks like. I just want to say 2 minutes, move on. I actually do recommend spending the final 2 minutes, take a breath before you move on to the next essay. Most of you will do it in order: synthesis, rhetorical analysis, argumentation. So whatever essay, I recommend before you move on, go back quickly, read every word, or at least do a quick skim looking for grammar mistakes, spelling errors. You just want to clean it up, capitalization errors, stuff like that. You just want to be professional. You don't want your reader wondering like, hey, why is this so unpolished? Now we're trained as readers not to look for like errors. Like we're looking for like to reward you for what you're doing well. But let's be honest. At the same time, if there's multiple errors, it will affect the score. So I'm talking at the end about writing style. I'm talking next week at the end of our unit here about writing style. But that's certainly a big piece of it. Is just, are you doing the things right? Are you spelling correctly? Are you capitalizing when appropriate? Are you using sentence fluency? Which is my next point really quickly. Sentence fluency is just, does one sentence flow to the next? That is hard to edit in 2 minutes. So I recommend going and just seeing if there's anything you can change quickly. But just get used to doing it right the first way and just checking yourself. Does one sentence flow into the next? You won't have ample time to make significant revisions. So proofread is really the majority of those 2 minutes, right? You're just double checking, do I feel good about my work? And some of you might say, hey, I don't have time for that. Totally get that. My recommendation, though, is sneak in proofreading minutes. My stronger recommendation, though, like so there's tension here, is do it right the first time to the best of your ability. Because you're not going to save yourself too much in proofreading. It's just cleaning up, maybe just solidifying your score. Proofreading is not going to really raise your score, right? It's just going to make sure you don't lower it with some errors. All right, so in summary, here's my potential writing plan. First 12 minutes, and this is just for rhetorical analysis. 12 minutes. This is the most important step. Read the text, plan out your essay. If you rush that, The rest is going to fall short. So once you've done that, 6 minutes of an intro, the next, the biggest chunk of time is the biggest intentionally, the most important chunk. Once you've done the first step, which I just said is the most important, is 18 minutes. So you can't do the 18 minutes effectively if you don't do the 12 minutes. So assuming you've done that well, you got to spend the majority of your time in your 2 to 3 body paragraphs. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute. Quickly, you write a conclusion, quickly proofread and revise.